What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look what's going on in pop culture, or your year roundup in pop culture, I guess.
Yes.
I'm Pat Sheehan with Dave Martinson. That's his voice right there. Dave, we did not movies, TV last week.
We're doing
We got movies in 2 weeks, but today, probably the list that I agonized over the most. Our best albums and best songs of 2018. How you doing today, though, Dave?
I'm doing well, sir. I, like you, spent a fair amount of time on this list because I think the music is the hardest list to make just because you have so much to pick from, especially nowadays where there's so much music, easily accessible. So this is a challenging task, I say. Definitely more than last year because I've listened to a lot more music this year. So it was fun to make, though, because I think there's, a lot of good picks and a lot of good things that I had to omit. That's why you make the list when it's challenging like that.
Yeah, I look at my honorable mention section and it's pretty long. And we're gonna be jumping into a few of these and deep diving. I also have some on here that we didn't even talk about throughout the year, just things that we had overlooked. I got too late and didn't make sense to circle back to. But why don't we jump in here? And before we do jump in, I want you to hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube, and go to soundcloud.com/nowstalgiapod, and you can catch us anywhere that you can get podcasts, including Spotify now. So give us that follow, share us with friends, and at Nowstalgiapod on Twitter is where to hit us up for all the content that we don't talk about on the pod. All right, best albums. We're going to count down 10 to 1. I cheated on these lists, Dave. I'm going to tell you how. I made my list of 11, sharing the 10 spot on both lists because I couldn't whittle it down that much. So
wow.
I'll go first. I'll go first on albums. You can go first on songs. Number 10, Anderson .Paak, Oxford, tied with Tierra Whack.
I didn't hear that one.
Oxnard. Oxnard. And tied with Tierra Whack, Whack World. Now,
nice.
Yeah. I'm wondering where I know you probably had Anderson .Paak on your list. Did you have Tierra Whack?
Yeah, so I have Anderson .Paak number 1. Spoilers already, I guess. And then Tierra Whack, I also have 10.
All right, so why don't we talk about Paak first? Why was it your number 1?
Yeah, it's funny because I also, more spoilers, I did not pick an Anderson song for the songs list. And I was trying to, I was thinking, I was like, do I have an Anderson song that I really would go to? And I really couldn't narrow it down. I couldn't whittle it down. And I think that kind of speaks to the strengths of the album, for me anyway, is that I just thought front to back, the vibe was so strong and the highs were so consistently high that, I didn't want to I'd rather honor the whole thing than just, try and pick a highlight, which again, there's a lot of options. But we talked about the album recently, so we don't want to belabor that too much. Check the review out. But I think Oxnard is perhaps not as strong as his last record, Malibu, but I think he's perhaps his most confident self on this album. And he's just a talented singer, talented songwriter, talented drummer. Great ear for production. Obviously, Dr. Dre's all over this thing. Great features from big name people like Kendrick and Q-Tip, and I just think it's a fucking fantastic West Coast album. It's great. So yeah, it's my favorite. It was tough to narrow it down with my number 2 to go decide for 1, but I went with it and I'm happy with it. Really like the album.
It's a solid choice to number 1. I think that just speaks to the strength of music this year. That it came in at number 10 for me, and I could have had it almost anywhere else on this list. The thing that stands out most to me about Oxnard, and again, we belabored this in our review, so definitely check that out. But I think just the way that Anderson, infuses his personality into this with his humor, his own stylings, like sonically and with his jazz drumming, but also he gets like some of the best features in this of the year. Tupac, not Tupac, that would be amazing. He got Tupac. Snoop Dogg, he got Q-Tip, a great J. Cole feature. Like you gotta give it to him for that. So Oxnard, definitely check it out. Now Tierra Whack is a little bit more interesting. She's a up and coming rapper out of Philadelphia, and this is a 15-minute album with 15 songs. We reviewed this earlier in the year. The reason that makes it onto my list is because I think Tierra Whack is the most exciting, like new artist, if you want to call her new. This is her first like real, real project, and the fact that she was able to make 15 songs that were 1 minute and make it a gripping listen is something that I think I've thought about almost as much as any other album this year, just in terms of how experimental this was, and what a great and interesting idea, and to pull it off, just and the fact that I come back to some of her songs on this too for only being a minute, and I still like Pet Cemetery comes to head as one that I come back to a lot.
Mumbo Jumbo.
Yes, Mumbo Jumbo is a great one off this. So Tierra Whack, one of the most exciting artists of the year. Definitely can't wait to see what she does more of.
Yeah, I couldn't leave off this album just because, despite the very short runtime, it presents so many more ideas than albums 3 times as long, and that's what's so exciting. Because again, as you mentioned, perhaps what's most exciting is future potential. The music will get next, but I think even just Whack World itself is, like you said, it's a very unique project. It doesn't really sound like anyone else, but also is quite impressive just in terms of sheer artistry. So yeah, I think it's the format itself is worth honoring, but also is good content. So yeah, big fan of Tierra Whack. Looking forward to seeing what she does next for sure.
What was your number 10?
Tierra Whack 10.
Tierra Whack. Okay, number 9 for you.
My number 9 was Denzel Curry, Taboo, which we also reviewed recently or a few months ago, and I've been a Denzel Curry fan a long time, but this was his first like quote good project. I think the project's actually very great, and he brings just intense lyricism, manic energy on the mic, and also doesn't really sound like anyone else. I think his voice is really unique, but he also is kind of a purist in terms of his rapping ability. But then you have this album, and like, yeah, there was like the themes of like the dark and the light on it, but if you just think about the lyrics, what he actually gets down to, you know, whether he's talking like about social issues and like death and darkness and depression and stuff, there's a lot going on. So I think Taboo, another album where I didn't pick a song for my songs list from this, because I just think it works better as a work of art. But I think obviously the first single, Cloud Cobain, is probably the most successful song, but also is a little bit different than we've gone from Denzel before. You know, more of a singy like pop rap song that also isn't skimping on the content. So yeah, Denzel Curry, Taboo, his debut album. Big fan. I love to tell people about him, and I think this has put a lot of people on because this album got a lot of love.
Yeah, this was I think a huge step up for Denzel Curry. He seems to be emerging as a budding star. It didn't make my list, but it's a very worthy choice. You know, when it came out for a couple weeks, people just kept going back to it and lauding it. So if you missed that one, definitely circle back to it. My number 9, Blood Orange, Negro Swan. And this is one where I didn't pick a song off this to be on my best songs list, only because I think this album's strength is it being an album. When you listen to this from front to back, it's very immersive, and it really pulls you from song to song with the way that it's produced so beautifully. And Blood Orange, as a musician and as an artist, I think really packs a lot of different ideas, and some of the lyrics on this I think could have been improved, but then he has other songs like Orlando or Charcoal Baby, which are, I think, incredibly exciting and intimate, and that play with these ideas that really pull you in. Negro Swan, I think, is an album that you're not going to see on a lot of people's top 10s, but it's going to be in people's like 15s, 20s, 30s. Yeah. But I really think that for what he did in making this a cohesive experience, it's a wonderful project. So did this make your list? I'm going to guess no.
No, it didn't. I like a list in my honorable mentions where it's like albums that like I respected and like recognize as good, but they're not like my favorite type of music per se. So thus they're not on my own list. But this would be one of those albums. Yeah, it was good, very good.
All right, number 8. I had MGMT, Little Dark Age.
Nice.
Probably my biggest surprise of the year. You know, MGMT kind of fell off there for a while, and when I heard they were dropping another album, I was like, gonna give this crap a listen, and put it on the car. And I can actually remember driving to this and being like, Oh shit. MGMT is fucking back. And it's really exciting. You know, when I looked at my Spotify year-end list, I had 3 or 4 songs from this album that I had listened to the most this year. And I think that just speaks to not only how they were able to recapture the poppiness of their sound, but they did it in a way that didn't feel cheap. Like they were just trying to make pop sounds. They stayed true to, I think, their inventiveness and what made them originally really exciting. But like Little Dark Age, She Works Out Too Much, When You Die, Me and Michael, James, like all of these songs are really great alternative rock songs for whatever that means at this point. And MGMT, I think, again, my surprise of the year for how they were able to come back and establish themselves. And I'm actually excited for an MGMT album in the future.
Yeah,
Couldn't have said that a year ago.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that's the main takeaway. It was a very refreshing and unexpected return to form because it's been a while, when fucking Kids dropped and the Record Spectacular came out. They've gone quite the journey, and they're kind of enigmatic guys as it is. So it was nice to see this. And definitely one of those like first surprises because that dropped towards the beginning of the year. So it's a good pick.
What was your number 8?
Yeah, my number 8, I don't have a whole lot to say, but my number 8's J-Rock's Redemption. I just think it's a really good like gangster rap album. It's a really good street rap. And like it's just one of those like solid records that most of the songs I think are really good. Again, good features. J-Rock obviously has the TD connection, so he can bring in those people. He can bring in fucking SZA, he can bring in Kendrick. But also like, there's just those street singles. And then it started off with King's Dead, which was obviously kind of viral for Future's reasons. But I think Rock really kind of came into his own on this because he's been someone who's been bubbling and grinding for so long. So the fact that he finally can make an album that really, just kind of captures the essence of who J-Rock is. He'll never be the best rapper, the biggest rapper, but I feel like this is finally like it's like, quote, this is the J-Rock record anyone want to put on. And it's kind of similar to Victory Lap by Nipsey Hussle, an album that actually just got a Grammy nomination. And I kind of view them in the same way, but I like this one a little bit more. So that's, yeah, J-Rock. Was very happy that this did as well critically as it did. Obviously, it still didn't do that well commercially for him, which has been a trend for him. But I think Rock is not too worried about that these days. He's doing good.
Solid pick. A lot of hip hop on your list so far. Does that continue at number 7?
Yeah, there's a lot of hip hop on here, and it's funny because I have a lot of alternative people, and you're gonna get to some of them, but it's like I never like revisited the albums that much, so I didn't want to put them on a personal list. But I mean, there's tons of albums that like if you were making like an objective list, yeah, it's gonna be a lot more multifaceted. For me, it's like 80%.
Who do you got number 7?
Number 7 for me is Kids See Ghosts.
Kanye West, came in at number 6 for me.
Yeah. So why did you have them at 6? I have them at 7. And I know initially when we heard that record, we're like, ooh, this is contender. This should be right at the top. But it dropped a little bit for me. Probably dropped a little bit for you. Why was that?
Yeah, I think first, I think that this was a great album that really pulled the best out of both of these artists. Kanye and Cudi have had, they've been making songs since like graduation, like
808s.
808. So
yeah.
They've been making music for a while, but they had their fallings out, and it was publicly documented, just like everything in Kanye's life seems to be at this point. And I think people were excited but cautious about this album. And then you hear Cudi on Ye, on Free, and you're just like, whoa, like they got something here. Then it comes out, was that next week or 2 weeks later, Kids See Ghosts, and it's fucking fire. And I think that there's a song track to track, it's very strong. But I think where it kind of fell off for me was I didn't find myself finding many of the songs super memorable. And I think even though it's a really solid project, and every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh, this is really good, it never really like stuck for me like some of these other albums did. So for that reason, I think it fell a bit, but it's still ace. Why did it fall for you?
I think I agree. The memorable aspects of it a little questionable. And I think the problem is when most people heard this album, it was tough to judge, strictly musically. A lot of people are bringing in outside forces, obviously, when it comes to Kanye these days, which makes sense. And especially coming off Ye, which most people found pretty disappointing. I still like Ye quite a bit. Didn't make my list, but Kids See Ghosts was definitely a step up because it definitely felt like Kanye was just like more lucid on this. Again, given the recent work we were comparing it against, but also Cudi, who had been through a critically wrought time recently as a solo artist, to have these two guys kind of meet up, and it's like that perfect union that it's like, wow, why couldn't we have got this, back when they were writing Welcome to Heartbreak and stuff, Now I think there, like you said, there's just some really special moments. Like I think the Louis Prima flip for Fourth Dimension is like classic Kanye production, and obviously Mike Dean was on that beat too. So I think that's probably my favorite song. I think Ghost Town Part 2 did not live up to the namesake the way the first Ghost Town put everyone on, and then Reborn, which I'll talk about a little bit later, gives Kanye's probably his best single verse in a very long time, several years. So I think, even though has some issues, and because it's a short record, 7 tracks, 20 something minutes, it's tough to make a total impression if you're not nailing every single thing. But I still think what we got is still really good. And, again, do you separate any thoughts about Kanye the guy right now? You listen to this, listen to him and Cudi, it's great chemistry, and I think it ultimately just sounds very good.
I totally agree. I hope Kanye's able to kind of rein it in a bit. He's been going these tweet storms recently, and he's saying that when he was dropping My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like he was doing these tweet storms too, but it feels a little different. And with everything surrounding him at this point, it's I want him to be able to find a way to like harness that and not have to be out there the way he is. But that's a conversation for a non-list day. Let's keep it moving. This was probably the hardest pick for me, because I had probably about 20 to 25 albums that I was looking at for this list, and the thing that kept coming up was Boy Genius, Camp Cope, Phoebe Bridgers,
Mitski,
like all of these, but mostly female alternative rock artists. It was a really strong category this year, but the one that stood out the most, and the interesting thing about it is the longevity of it, is Soccer Mommy. And this is an album we didn't talk about on the pod, but Soccer Mommy probably has the line of the year. I don't want to be your fucking dog, which that song is fantastic. And I wasn't turned on to this album when it first came out, but my girlfriend has XM radio in her car, and she listens to the alternative stations a lot. And so I heard Your Dog, and every time I would listen all the way through, I'd be like, that's a great song, I should check that out. And then I started to hear Cool, and then I started to hear Still Clean, and I was like, man, this girl's pretty good. Gotta check it out. And I finally got around to it about a month or two late, and this album from start to finish is fantastic. Sophie Allison, this is her third album, and she just kills it. Not only is it lyrically really introspective and deep and smart, but she creates these grooves and these bass lines and these moments throughout the album that just like bring up so many like emotions and feelings for you around different topics, kind of like in Skin, like there's a point in like the second chorus when everything kind of like swells together and it's just really beautiful. Or like a stripped down ballad like Wildflowers is just a really great way to end the album. So Clean, for an album that came out in March, still the longevity and the lasting of it is phenomenal. So definitely check Soccer Mommy out. She seems to be announcing herself with authority. I also didn't even mention Snail Mail, which didn't make my list, but another female alternative artist, which pretty fantastic album this year. So a lot to like. Definitely check out Soccer Mommy. I already talked about Kids See Ghosts, so why don't you jump to your number 6, Dave?
Yeah, my number 6 is Georgia Smith, Lost and Found, debut record. Thing is, my two favorite songs on that album are older, Blue Lights and Teenage Fantasy. It's a 2016 and 2017 song. So I would have picked one of them to be on the list if they were actually songs of the year. But regardless, her debut album, I think, kind of confirmed what a lot of people were suspecting, that she's probably like the most exciting female in R&B space since like when Rihanna first popped. Like you can just see the potential and the talent, and she already has strong songwriting as like a 20-year-old or however old she is. And I was just really impressed with it. And because, like, it's alternative R&B, it's not more traditional, like say LMI or something. But um again, it's almost like Tierra Whack, where I want to hear what's next from Georgia Smith so soon. But I mean, shout out Drake. This is one of like those finds that he should get a lot of credit for, because obviously he gave her shine like 2 years ago now. So yeah, I was very happy with this. Came out back in June, and yeah, I think some of those big tracks from it stuck with me a long time. Where Did I Go, I think, is probably my favorite song. That was new and original to the album.
Yeah.
But yeah, big fan.
Yeah, I really liked Lost and Found, the title track of that album. I thought that was just a phenomenal like song just to kind of put on and groove to, like drink coffee in the morning or something. It's really beautiful. She didn't make my list, but it's a worthy choice. Number 5 for me is Vince Staples' FM, a 22-minute album with 11 songs, but what they like 1 or 2 interludes of really only 9 songs. And it's based around this like FM radio concept.
Big boys.
And Vince just fucking kills it, man. Like, we talked about Big Fish Theory and how excellent that album was, and still going back to it, like Bangkok is like, I think, one of the best songs of like the past 5 years for me. I don't know. I just really fucking love this. Bad Backs. Yeah, there you go. Bangkok. My brain is not functioning very well today. My brain don't work well, but kind of just to like bring it back to FM, he is so witty, and he's able to create these songs that like suck you in. You're like, oh, this is a great song. And then you're like really tuned into the lyrics, like Fun, probably the biggest song off it. You're really sucked in. You're like, oh, this is a groovy beat. Like, I'm really into this. And then he's talking about like his homies getting killed in the street. And you're just like, oh shit. Like, this is classic Vince, where he's able to like suck you in and make it interesting. And you're really digging the vibe. And then you're like, oh, he's talking about some real shit and like some fucked up shit. I'm guessing FM made your list, probably a little higher, right?
Yeah, FM's number 3 for me. And we reviewed it pretty recently, so we don't have to talk too much. But I would just add that I think this was almost unexpected level up from Vince, because we already held him in such high esteem. But the fact that he can make such a well-constructed concept album at this length, I think, is incredibly impressive. And then if you separate the album construct, you can just listen to songs like Fun or Feels Like Summer, or even those interludes from Earl and Tyga are pretty good. It's I think you can jump in at any point and just really enjoy yourself. But great features. Kenny Beats, producer of the year, killed it again on this. So yeah, I love FM.
It's a great pick. Number 3, it could have been number 3 on mine as well. What's next on your list?
Yeah, number 5 for me is Pusha T, Daytona, the first of those Kanye produced records back in June, right? June.
If you know. I think that actually came out late May 26 or something like that.
Oh, right. Yes. And yeah, like Pusha T, he doesn't. I mean, again, we check the review out for more, but we know that Pusha T doesn't do everything you can do in rap. But the things he does really, really well. And I kind of think about this thing about J-Rock, where it's just like, your idea of a great Pusha T album is Daytona. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It has incredibly mean, barky raps the way you expect from Push, and it just fucking bangs. Like, I think I will listen to Cocaine Metaphors still. Yes, sign me up for more when they're this good and they're this entertaining. So yeah, I fucking Daytona. A lot's been said about that, but I was fucking love this album.
Yeah, it was number 2 on my list. Daytona, it's for being 7 tracks. I think I did not enjoy an album and want to just restart an album more than this one. Just because every song it sounded a little bit different, but it just had the same energy. And like you pretty much summed it up perfectly. Like, give me more raps about cocaine if it's gonna sound like this. I can't really look through the list and pick out one song I don't like that much. Maybe What Would Meek Do like is like the one song I'm like, it's not that great. But
I would go with Santeria for me. We're like a lower
I love
point.
Santeria, man. Like,
But yeah,
I think that's a great track.
You're nitpicking, I think, if you're trying
Exactly.
to critique any one song. So, but again, you can jump into this album song by song or listen straight through. It's great either way, just like Vince.
Yeah. We both had in our top fives. I think that speaks to the strength of it for itself. Number 4 for you. What'd you have?
Number 4 for me is Mac Miller's Swimming. Perhaps this would have been a little lower on the list if Mac hadn't passed away. How can I know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the time we talked about it where it was, Mac continued to level up and evolve as an artist on this album. More jazz instrumentation, more neo soul influence. Obviously, we know how talented all his friends are. Internet has influence on here, right? He worked with Steve Lacy. And I think Mac did a really good job about talking about a lot of his demons. Unfortunately, it didn't help at the end of the day. But I think this is probably his most critically acclaimed album for good reason, because I think it has the most to offer in that regard. Again, we had seen flashes of this on past projects, even Divine Feminine, the one right before it. We kind of had an idea that Mac was, already well beyond the early frat rap, but I think this really kind of crystallized here on Swimming that like Mac had like a lot of ideas that we never really were going to give him credit for. And I was very disappointed that we can't hear more, but I think Swimming is a pretty nice final record. We've talked a lot about posthumous albums recently from X and Little Peep, and those are unfinished, half baked songs mostly, right? But I think Swimming, obviously because he finished it while he was alive, but Swimming I think is a really nice final piece of work. So number 4 for me.
Yeah, it was jumping in and out of my list as I was like thinking of more records and kind of dissecting it. It probably would have ended up as like 11 or 12 on my list. But it's a really strong record. If you go back and listen to our review, I think the thing that we came away with was at the time we felt like the sky was the limit for Mac artistically, that he was just about to go on this run of like making these really solid albums that were, showing his growth as an artist. And I think that just enhances the loss even more than it already is. So definitely an album we're listening to. And I'm if nothing else, I hope this also leads people back to his other albums, which have been pretty good the last couple of years. Like you said, after that frat rap phase, he really grew. So definitely hope people check that out. Number 4 for me was Parquet Courts, Wide Awake.
I knew this would be on there for you somewhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, I probably talked about it multiple times on the pod. This was the most exciting rock album for me this year. And I think what I liked most about it was it took this, I mean, they talked about a lot of stuff. I mean, Tom Brady, there's a Tom Brady metaphor in there somewhere. I think in Total Football right in the beginning, but this really focused on like protest and political protests and how people, they want change around these things, but they packaged it in this way that was really creative, where even just the song Wide Awake, which I'll talk about a little bit later, they use congas, they use bongos, they have this awesome bass line. They grew so much as artists from their last couple of records. I mean, just like the bassist for Parquet Courts really shines on this album. And I think they really tried to infuse more dance and almost in like an LCD sound system way. They really tried to make this a more interesting and inventive album, and they really killed it. There's a stretch in the beginning from like almost had to start a fight to probably the song Wide Awake. That is just a phenomenal stretch of songs. Freebird 2's in there, Normalization, just a really strong record. And if you like rock music and you're feeling a little bit dejected, rightfully so, about the state of it, turn to Parquet Courts, check them out, and see if you can dig them, because they give me a lot of optimism for the genre.
I think that's probably my favorite rock record of the year as well, to be honest. I really liked it as well.
Above the Beths? The Beths?
Yes, I like it more than the Beths, yes. I like the best first like EP more than their album that came out this year. But
Gotcha.
do you have the best on your list?
Interesting. Well,
Are you hinting?
nah, they were one of the ones I had to leave off,
Right.
unfortunately.
It's tough.
Um, it's a tough list this year, man. A lot of great music. Um, number 3 for you, Dave.
Number 3 for me is Vince, and
Okay.
number 1 for me is Anderson .Paak. So number 2 is probably on your list. So why don't you keep going?
All right. So 3 for me was Kacey Musgraves. We reviewed this earlier in the year. I'd never thought I'd have a country record on my list, but Kacey Musgraves just really blew me away with this, and I hadn't really been that tuned into her until this year. When we talked about our anticipated albums for the year, we talked about how she was supposed to drop an album, but neither one of us were very familiar.
Right.
So when we reviewed this and we both liked it, I was like, huh, there's something here. And I went back to many of the songs on this. Like Golden Hour is probably my favorite one from it. And it's just this very like watching the sunset type song. And it really just makes you like filled with like joy. But then she had like Happy Sad, Lonely
Cowboy.
Weekend. Yeah, Slow Burn, Space Cowboy, where she talked about loneliness and she talked about all these other things going on for her. And she tried out a lot of different hats on this to great success. I mean, probably the song everybody turns to off this is High Horse, which is like this disco country song, which I'm guessing will be on our list. Maybe I chose to leave it off, unfortunately, because I only wanted to pick one song from this record, but almost every song on here I enjoy when I listen back through it. So if you haven't checked out Golden Hour, I highly recommend it, even if you're not into country music. Number 2 was Pusha T, Daytona for me. So your number 2, my number 1, gotta be Dirty Computer, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. Why are we giving Janelle so much praise here, dog?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this before, the idea of, I think for Pusha, where you listen to a record and you just like want to restart it, you just want to like reset that vibe and dive back in. And that's how I felt listening to Dirty Computer the first time. And it's interesting because I mean, it's pop, it's R&B, it's soul, it's a lot of genres, but in a tasteful way. But Janelle has always, on Electric Lady, on Arch Android, she's the idea of like man and machine has been something she's explored and worked on for some time, right? In her their alter ego she's been building up. So it's definitely like a good sequel to her past work. But even if you come into a blind without knowing the backstory of her career or anything, you can just immediately jump in and feel these songs that are both really fun and sound great. You can dance to a lot of this album, and you also can like really think and sit down and think about stuff too. Songs like Pink, for example, are both really fun and have really good moments, like when the bridge happens, but also have like good messages and like make you think if you want to. And of course, the videos for this whole album are awesome. She's a big long one, and of course, smaller actual single videos. So I struggled picking this versus Anderson. I think part of my reason going with Oxstar number 1 is because I knew you would have Janelle 1, so I figured that we wouldn't copy. It's kind of like last year where I had Kendrick, you had Lord, and we just flipped them for 1 and 2. Same thought. But yeah, I think Dirty Computer is fantastic, and it's very well deserved for album of the year. Grammy nom, it fucking won't win, no chance. But I'm really glad that she got that recognition, because again, this is an album that didn't sell nearly as well, didn't stream nearly as well as we would have hoped, given how good it is and how critically lauded it was. But nevertheless, it's going to endure. But why was it your number 1?
I mean, Janelle Monáe. That's what I gotta say about it. I was just gonna say she's just a fucking queen, man. From the album art to basically the first like 7 or 8 songs on this album, which I think are all really, really good. I mean, I guess it drops off when you get to a Pharrell Williams song, which I still think is very catchy and fun to listen to. It's just crazy. It has this. I mean, the run from Screwed to Make Me Feel. That's the best 4-song run of the year. And I mean, if you want to just pick out 12 minutes off an album that you really can't skip through just because it's so infectious and so much fun to listen to. I can't really think of another album that really compares to it that way for this year. And I mean, the thing is, I look up and down the playlist, like even the first song, like I remember first listening to Dirty Computer with Brian Wilson. I was like, this is really interesting. Like, it's really pulling me in. And then it jumps into Crazy Classic Life, and it blends so perfectly into this like pop funk like goodness. And then she starts rapping at the end, and I'm like, oh shit, like Janelle's on another one right now. This whole album is fantastic, and you know, you spoke to the themes of it. But Janelle Monáe is she's a lightning bolt, man. I really hope I catch her this summer at a festival, because not only is she a great she makes great songs, but she's a great performer on stage, and I'm really excited for her career. The only thing I have to say about it, like negative I have to say about it, is there were so many good songs, kind of like you did with Anderson. I left her off my best songs of the year list. I couldn't pick one of them. So and any honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I wanted to mention a few. I think if you're reading other lists, obviously there's plenty to pick from. There'll be some common albums that you'll probably see that we didn't talk about. We mentioned Mitski before. I think the 1975's record is on a lot of these lists. We just reviewed that extensively, so go check that out for our thoughts on that. I think Father John Misty, God's Favorite Customer, I think is like almost went under the radar this year, but I actually really like that. Of course, Cardi B's Invasion of Privacy is on a lot of lists. Ariana Grande Sweetener is probably the best pure pop album of the year. Camila Cabello's Camilla, her debut album, I thought was really strong. One of the first big albums we got. And then personally, I wanted to shout out Charlie Puth's Voice Notes, just because that album has like 5 fucking bops that I love. And I find him very interesting in the pop space as a male pop singer. And then lastly, shout out Astroworld from Travis Scott, shout out Iridescence from Brockhampton, and shout out Room 25 from No Name. But great year. Tough to narrow it down to 10.
Yeah, it was tough. You know, I mentioned a couple of the female alternative artists. I also want to shout out Arctic Monkeys, an album that's definitely grown on me. Tranquility Base, Hotel Casino. After seeing it played live, I definitely appreciate the songs more. 21 Pilots had an album that surprised me, but I thought was still really good. Dirty Projectors with Lamplit also surprised me. I didn't think I was going to enjoy that album, but I came back to it quite a bit. Yeah, and you mentioned Iridescence. I thought that was an album that I expected to make your top 10 list in some way, but I appreciate your integrity in keeping it off, because I don't think it's a top 10, but it's like a top 20 album of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
For me. All right, let's jump into the...
I was going to say, did you have any records that you were like really disappointed in this year, that you had high expectations for and they just did not meet those expectations? Because I had a few that came to mind for me.
Here, read through your list and I'll think about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I've talked about these a few. There's a few rap records that I wanted to be great and they just weren't. YG, A$AP Rocky, Migos, Ray Shremmerd. But also, I think bigger, pop-wise, I think this is the first one of these to pop, or second one after Culture 2. Justin Timberlake, Man in the Woods.
Yeah.
Total flop. So definitely an album that aspired to be on all these lists. And he was hoping that we were talking about that album the way we just talked about Janelle Monáe, in terms of various genres and, you know, lyrical themes, but it just was totally flat. So I don't know if you had any of those to come to mind, but those really stood out to me.
No, none that can come to mind, but fuck the 1975. That's all I have to say. Why don't we jump in? I honestly, I just didn't give a lot of thought to this. I could probably come up with some, but I just keep listening to all these like top 10 lists, and I had to listen to the 1975 so many times, listening to like podcasts and stuff. But
yeah,
I'm over them, dude. I'm over them. But I'm wondering, are they going to be on your best songs of 2018 list?
You'll have to find out. Hey.
All right. Well, why don't we start with our number 10s for our best songs of 2018? I'll go first. Salt in the Wound by Boy Genius. I also, you know, cheated a little bit with this, and I said Your Dog by Soccer Mommy, but I talked about Soccer Mommy enough in my best album list. Boy Genius, you know, Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, and Julian Baker. We reviewed them recently. But Salt in the Wound off their EP, self-titled EP, is probably the song that sounds most like a blended cohesive effort. You know, like we talked about how on each of those tracks, they each had their own flair from the
Right.
individual artist who kind of was leading it. And Salt in the Wound is a moving piece that just really blends all three of their strengths together beautifully in this stirring, swelling, really overwhelming track that then fades out really beautifully. Definitely a song that I think about quite a bit, and I feel really happy that they came together to make that song, because it's something I would probably be listening to for years. What was your number 10?
Yeah, my number 10 is Just a Stranger by Kali Uchis featuring Steve Lacy, produced by Ramil from Brockhampton.
Mm-hmm.
And Kali Uchis' Isolation, an album that also is an honorable mention for me. But I think that's a song that I went back to the most, just because I think it's just a really fun song. I think Steve Lacy's feature is great. It's very infectious chorus. And I really like Kali Uchis as a person like an alternative pop space. And yeah, this is just the song I went back to the most. So I wanted to get her on one of the lists somehow, and this is what I went with.
I was wondering when she was going to come up, because I knew that you really enjoyed that record. Yeah, she's great. Kayla is going to be a star for sure. Number 9 on my list, Eamon Dunes, Blue Rose. You know, we didn't review this one either. Freedom came out back in, they released the deluxe edition recently, but it came out back, I believe, earlier in the year. It's looking, yeah, back in March, so I thought. And this actually came up through Spotify. Like, I was just listening to some alternative artists, and whatever I had queued up finished, and they were playing random songs. And Blue Rose came on, and I was like, oh shit, this is fucking hypnotic and dancey. And I went back and listened to the album. The whole album, Freedom, is great, and it would have been in my probably top 20 if we had made a list. It was on my honorable mention, but I thought I'd talk about it now. Damon McMahon is this, like, you know, alternative rock artist from Brooklyn who's made 5 albums and didn't really hit until Freedom came out this year. And the whole album is great, but Blue Rose specifically is just so it just sucks you in. You feel like you're just in a different world, like you're on a safari or something throughout. And his vocals are haunting and beautiful. And if you haven't checked out Eamon Dunes, I highly recommend it, but especially like start with Blue Rose. And if that doesn't suck you in, I might have to check to see if you have a pulse. Number 9 for you, Dave.
Number 9 for me is Tanya by Brockhampton. A song that actually took a while to grow on me when I first heard it as a single, and they performed it on Fallon too. And once I understood that it was just going to be a different kind of song than what they had on the Saturation trilogy, I had a more open mind, and that's how I feel about Iridescence in general. But I think Tanya is probably one of the highlights for me. I know you really like San Marcos, but think about these songs in the same way. Brockhampton had a really difficult year or so, personally, as a band, and this is a song of them really just airing that out on song about how they've been feeling. And there's a reason they're pretty down throughout the song.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Kevin, much like on his Wait verse, really gets into the shit on Tanya.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably the song that'll like last the longest for me, because, you know, like the first song, New Orleans, you know, that's a great Brockhampton banger. Could have picked that, but I think Tanya, there's just more heft to it, you know, more weight.
Yeah, emotional weight.
So that's why I went with it.
Number 8 for me was If You Know, You Know by Pusha T. We talked about it enough, but
yeah,
if it's not on your list, you missed, boy. Why don't we move on to number 7? Because I don't know if we need to talk anymore about Pusha. We give him enough praise. What's your number 7, Dave?
Well, my number 8 is Rotation 112 by J-Rock.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you didn't say your number 8.
No, it's all good. Again, this is similar to my thoughts on Redemption as a whole. You know, I thought about, do I need to put J-Rock on both lists? And then I was like, you know, honestly, personally, I just really like this song. And I think J-Rock just fucking kills it. It's a great song. And that's why I went with it. I mean, I was entertaining a lot of things. I was entertaining like Nicki Minaj's Barbie Dreams here. I was entertaining LMF by Smino. Heck, I even thought about Rap Devil by MGK. But I went with a song that I know I listened to more than those, which was one of these rock songs. Fucking on the end of the day, sometimes it's just really simple, you know, and that's why I have J-Rock on both lists.
Yeah, almost like trust your instincts on that. Um, it's funny for me to look at my number 8 and my number 7 because they're so opposite. If you know, you know, is this like it's like slowly builds up to this fucking banger, and then number 7 is Golden Hour, which I was just talking about with Kacey Musgraves. But it's like I think the description I wrote is it literally makes me feel like I'm sitting on a porch like drinking a beer while like the sun goes down. It's just really a beautiful song. And Kacey Musgraves had so many different notes on that album, like we talked about, but that's the one I come back to the most. I think I enjoy the music that makes me feel like I'm just chilling out. I mean, she's just a master. So definitely check that out. What was your number 7, Dave?
Yeah, my number 7 is "Breathin'" by Ariana Grande. And initially, I was like, I'll probably have Sweetener on the album list, and then it got booted out. But I still think that's the best pure pop album we've had this year. I think the reason it was so exciting, or is so exciting, is because this is like the first time Ari stopped trying to show you how great of a singer she was. She finally acknowledged that she has those pipes. She doesn't need to constantly make that be all that's it about. I think a song like "Breathin'," which especially in the beginning, especially like in the hooks on this, it's more subdued, especially for her past standards. But I also actually went back. I went to this song a lot after Mac Miller died. Funny enough,
Hmm.
and I really like the message. I know a lot of people like it for other reasons. Similar though, I think it's a song that can be quite effective and personal, and that's why I went with this one. But I think there's a lot of good songs you could have picked from the Ari record, but I went with "Breathing" because that's the one I personally listen to the most.
That's a really inspired choice. And it's I'm surprised by it, but that was one of the highlights off that album, which I didn't love, but I thought that was one of the better songs. Number 6 for me. So you talked about Tanya, and San Marcos is probably my favorite song off the Brockhampton album. But 1999 Wildfire Dog, that's the best Brockhampton song of the year. And
Not on an album.
anytime, not on the album, and anytime you can give me Brockhampton infused with Outkast,
Yeah.
and I'm just fucking bopping to it, and I feel like I'm like listening to Aquamini, like Aquemini. I know I said it wrong. I
Aquemini,
say
Jesus.
Aquamini. Yeah, I've always said Aquamini. I know it's Aquemini. I don't give a fuck. I like to say it the way I say it. Dude, it's so fucking fun. Like that song. I think about like the sirens in that in the beginning. Like, woo woo. Like it's just fire, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Joba has like a really fun verse, really off the wall, which is what you kind of expect from him. But yeah, Kevin just kills it as doing Andre, you know?
Yeah.
And Kevin shows a lot of other vocal range on Iridescence, but we never really sound like he sounded on Wildfire. Yeah, that's a great pick. You know, I'm surprised you didn't go with like Love It If You Made It, because that's like Billy Joel. And this is like Outcast. I thought you'd like those kind of comps.
Well, anytime you can be saying "I'd love it if we made it," Dave, and there's some fucking line in there that I was reading today. I was reading through the lyrics and I was like, oh god, this is so fake heavy. It's crazy. What's number 6 on your list?
6 for me is "Stack That Cheese" by Lupe Fiasco featuring Nicki Jean off Drogas Wave.
Shout out Drogas Wave,
an album that we reviewed. That review was very popular on our YouTube channel, so check that out. But no, I think "Stack That Cheese" was the immediate highlight of that very long Lupe record. For one reason, it was because it was the fucking sequel to "Hip Hop Saved My Life," one of the best Lupe songs of all time. And the fact that he made the sequel song like over 10 years later, and he just picks it back up into that story. It's a conceptual song that also sounds great that you can listen to just as a song. You don't actually have to listen to the part, but the storytelling is really cool, and it's like updated for 2018 like themes and like norms, but still feels like a sequel song. I fucking love it. I think it's a great banger, but also it's a really cool idea that I was happy to see happen.
Yeah, Drogas Wave just in general is we talked about it and reviewed it, so check that out. But really solid, if not a very long album. But yeah, Stack That Cheese it fucking bumps, and it's just so much fun to listen to. Great pick. Number 5 for me, we're staying hip hop. Ghost Town by Kanye West. Yay was a record that was very up and down, and I listened to it quite a bit. You know, I'm a big Kanye fan. I really think he's a musical genius. I hope he doesn't hear that. He doesn't need his ego boosted anymore. But Ghost Town is the most triumphant, if not nonsensical, song of the year. I mean, I don't know if Kanye understands how bleeding works and how burning works, but OVO Shake on this is a fucking
070.
070. OVO is fucking YouTube. I'm killing it so far. 070 Shake on this is just phenomenal, and really that I think when we talked about our XXL picks, I was like, she's got to be in consideration because of how strong she was on that. And just the whole, you know, Cuddy's fantastic in that as well. Just really strong effort and one of the catchiest lines too. And it really just brings you back to wanting to be a kid. And they also earthed some great memes from that, you know, like
Right.
just overall a great song. Your number 5, Dave.
Yeah, my number 5 is also something we mentioned briefly before, High Horse by Kacey Musgraves. Again, a song I never expected to really dig a Kacey Musgraves song. Like, I knew that she was critically liked country artist that was more left of center in terms of country standards, but I never expected like a fucking modern disco track, let
Right.
alone one that also bangs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a song that again has a good message, and you can listen to it for that if you want, or you can just dance to the song and have a good time with it. So I think High Horse is it's funny because like you mentioned, there's other picks, and I'm seeing Space Cowboy on a lot of lists too. But I think this is probably the standout for me just because you can listen to it for any occasion.
Yeah, it's a really fun song. I'm gonna have a another disco track from a female artist later on, so I only wanted to put one disco
I see.
song on here.
Fair.
My number 4, keeping it moving. I Like It by Cardi B featuring Bad Bunny and J Balvin. I like this song so much. I named one of my fantasy football teams after it. I
That's
mean,
right.
it's a catchy fucking song. Cardi is her most Cardi on that. She's swaggerful. She's hypnotic. She's killing it. And then you have the Latin infused sound, and this is probably the most catchy and infectious song of the year. And I find myself thinking about it all the time just because I can't get it out of my fucking head. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I think I like what's so cool about I Like It is that, I mean, as we've known, Cardi has help with her music. She doesn't write everything, probably even most things, right? But this is a song that Atlantic as a label really put together. They picked out this sample, they picked out
Mm.
Balvin and Bunny, and obviously Cardi probably had help writing. But it's a perfect example of when the industry system works because this song works so fucking well.
So well.
And yeah, the sample is great. It's still very tasteful. And like you said, Cardi is such an inspired performer on this. I
Hmm.
think my favorite line is probably at the right at the end of that verse. It's he's so handsome, what's his name? Like it's the best part in
Yep.
my opinion. But no, that's again, it's one of the most popular songs of the year, but it's also on almost all the top 10 lists for good reason. It's both very popular and very good. So you like to see that.
Yeah. It's a really great song. Your number 4.
My number 4 is Reborn by Kitsy Ghost,
Mm.
Kanye and Cudi. Mentioned it before. I think that second Kanye verse is like top tier. One of the best verses he's released since Twisted Fantasy, to be honest. So,
Hmm.
and I like Cudi on that too. So that was my pick. I know, like you were bigger on Ghost Town among all else from Ye this year, but I think Reborn was the standout for me from all that work.
Yeah, it's funny as I'm starting to get together my movie list. I think I keep going back to like, what am I just like having the best time listening to? You know, and like I think Mission Impossible Fallout's gonna be really high on my movie list for that reason, and that's the reason that Ghost Town was so high on my. It's a fun song to listen to that really just like catches me the right way. But Reborn, I mean, if you can get classic Kanye or at least like some piece of classic Kanye back, it's a worthy pick. Number 3 for me, I talked about this album, Wide Awake, the song that the album is named after. This starts off with congos, bongos. It sounds like they're like in a street in Latin America, and then this killer bass line comes in that if you listen to it, it's stuck in your head all day, and you feel like you're just moving through life with that bass line in your head. It's a really dancey and fun song, and I have an album which I just talked about being really, really great. This is probably the high point for me. So definitely check out Wide Awake by Parquet Courts. Your number 3, Mr. Martinson.
My number 3, Feels Like Summer, Vince Staples, Ty Dolla $ign, the first track on FM. But this is a song that I restarted, I think, 3 times before I kept listening to the rest of FM. It was just perfect West Coast Vince. Ty Dolla $ign is used just enough, the best way possible. And yeah, and I'll most say I think it's fantastic. Fantastic fucking G-Funk adjacent West Coast fucking gang rap.
Yeah, it's a great song. And anytime you immediately go back to listen to a song again, you know it's just like it's a heater for you. And I did that actually with this next song, which came in at number 2 for me, Mitski, Nobody. This was the disco track I was alluding to. I mean, this is disco carnival infused, piano driven Mitski at her best. And for, an album which we thought was pretty good, but Be the Cowboy kind of, I think, fell below our expectations. It's still a really solid album, but just not where we thought Mitski could pull off. Nobody, though, is a song that it drives you in this like swirl of emotion in your mind, and it brings, like I said, this carnival disco feel to a song about real loneliness and despair in a way. And it's really just it's a masterclass from Mitski, and it really does what she does best, is write these really meaningful, clever lyrics and pit it with this unique music. So Nobody, my number 2. Did you have it on your list, or did it just miss the mark?
I
know you like this one.
Yeah, I do. That's a song that's also in a lot of lists across the board. I like it. I think it's the clear highlight from the Mitski album.
Definitely. All right, your number 1, Dave.
No, my number 2.
Number 2. Sorry.
My number 2 is Self Care by Mac Miller, which is funny because when we reviewed Swimming at the time, I don't feel like I didn't talk about this song that much. I was talking about other stuff like Ladders and 2009. What's the Use? Right. Yep. That's the one we have in the playlist. But Self Care, I realized, was the song I was actually going to be going back to the most. I think, for one, it kind of has like a weird rhythm to it that's unlike other Mac songs. But I think also it happens to be the lyrical content, what he's actually talking about, given what actually happened to Mac. I think it's both really sad. Like, sometimes I have a hard time listening to this song, and I was like, I'll stop. But this is the one that sat with me the most, and I actually probably would pair this with Breathing a lot in terms of my personal listening. So yeah, I think it was on, they had this on Rap Caviar for a long time, and Mac obviously hasn't really been a Rap Caviar artist for a while, but that was a song that highlighted. And I think even though it's a heavier song, and even though his rapping is not as energetic as he is at other times, I think the beat really moves and is really cool. And also that hook he does, the switch the time zones. What do I know? Like, I think that's actually really listenable if you're just trying to listen to it strictly for Sonics. But yeah, it's a heavy song, but that's my number 2.
Damn. R.I.P. Mac, dude. What a fucking loss. 2018, not been the best year for a lot of different reasons, but musically it's been great. What was your number 1 song of the year, though?
My number 1 song was, I believe it was my number 2 most played song on Spotify this year, which I also use YouTube and download songs a lot, so that's not my only metric. But on Spotify, my number 2 song, my number 1 for 2018 is Screwed, Janelle Monáe featuring Zoe Kravitz. And this is that song. I definitely restarted this during the Dirty Computer listen, and I kept going back to this because I think this song is just so fucking fun. I honestly feel about it the way you feel about it. I like it, where it's just, I think everybody kills. I think Zoe Kravitz has really cool background vocals that they're mixed just right. So she's really just right behind Janelle when they're both singing together. And it's a fun hook. Again, like Pink, like other songs on this great album, there are lots of themes going on, and you can dig into those and listen to those if you want to, or you can just listen to the song as its own, have fun with it, because it's fucking really fun to listen to. So that's my number 1.
Yeah, man, that it starts off just from that guitar hook in the beginning. You're just like, oh shit, it's like fucking
Yep.
like bubble gum to you, and then you're just in for the ride. My number one, the reason I asked you, because I thought we were gonna have the same one. This Is America by Donald Glover ended up being my number one song for the year. And
Interesting.
last year, when I mentioned my number one song of the year was Bodak Yellow, I gave it for similar reasons. I thought that culturally it had one of the biggest impacts. And This Is America, I think, is not only a song that I found very catchy and interesting to listen to, and I thought was very good, but I thought the themes were very applicable to the year. Just talking about how it's been a difficult year for a lot of people, and how it talks about the plight of Black people in America is very meaningful for this time. But that mixed with the music video, and we talked about Atlanta last week and how that was a cultural making show. This is the same thing, where this really enveloped the culture when it came out, in like July or June, around there. And it people were just watching it and talking about it, and it really captured a moment. I think for that reason, more than almost any other song, this is my song of the year. What are your thoughts on that, though?
Yeah, my thing is, I think This Is America is the best music video of the year, but I think that's just a song without the visual component. It's not quite as strong.
That's a fair take for sure.
Doesn't mean you can't like it. I still think the song's fun to listen to, but the added nuance and message of the video, or lack thereof, remember, he never claimed to have a message for it, but you don't get much of any of that without the video. But I think it's actually very unique in that regard, because we don't have a lot of songs that are silver line in the video to tell the rest of the story like this,
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's still a nice pick. I saw the song live in September, and it was still really good, really fun. But yeah, I would say without the video component, it was tough for me to squeeze it on here.
I think that's a really strong take. One thing I just find interesting is the song that probably was the song of the year was Mo Bamba, but it was a 2017 track, like that.
Not just
Second
that,
Life,
a June 2017 track. Shit's
right?
fucking old. And
And
yes, it took over and percolated and peaked at like number 6 in the middle of this year. No doubt about that. The video came out in January, but the song was so underground for so long, I just couldn't put it on my list. And in the past, I would give people shit for putting Redbone and Bad and Bougie on lists a year later. So I couldn't do that now with Mo Bamba,
right.
But that was my number one most played song on Spotify. And I think in terms of songs that captured this year, it's right there with I Like It. It wasn't quite as popular, obviously, globally as I Like It. But in terms of, I think here in the US, domestically, clubs, parties, sporting events, colleges, the song was just fucking everywhere. And I mean, for good reason. We talked about it before, but the chants, the just the energy of the song is both perfect for live shows, but also perfect for events. So it's going to be on people's lists. I've already seen it around there, but I couldn't actually go with it because it's a little old already.
Yeah, for real. Before we wrap up, any songs that didn't make your list that you wanted to shout out real quick?
Yeah, I mentioned a few: Cloud Cobain,
Yep.
LMF, Barbie Dreams. I also really like Never Say Die by Churches. I really liked No Mistakes off Ye with Charlie Wilson. Really like Nice for What, Drake. I liked all his big hits, but I thought Nice for What was the best one. I'd like Wu-Tang Forever from Logic and literally all of Wu-Tang Clan. I thought that song was banged. And then I think my number one banger, when I tried to get it on here, I was maybe taking off J-Rock, but I decided to keep it off, is Reboot, sung by Kami featuring Chance the Rapper and Joy Perp, all Chicago song. I think that is just my favorite, just straight ignorant banger of the year. I almost got it on there. I also really liked Where the Bag At by City Girls. I love listening to women bisexual and take back misogyny and rap, so
Yeah.
I really respect them for that. And of course they had a big year with the Drake co-sign. And then lastly, I also almost had this on my list, but Electricity by Silk City and Dua Lipa I thought was a really fun dance song. I'm a big Dua Lipa fan. She was on my album list last year, but I think actually, for an off year for her, no album, it was a really strong feature, and I really like that song. And I mentioned the Charlie Puth bops. I almost got one on here, but I was like, I kind of think about those like 5 Charlie Puth songs in the same way, so I decided to keep them all off. But Shout
I
out fucking
just love
Booth,
how
man.
you stand Charlie Puth, man. That's my favorite part of the podcast now. I hope you bring him up every single time. Um, yeah, so a couple that I talked about before, like Fun by Vince Staples, I had a hard time leaving off. Mr. Tillman by Father John Misty, I thought was
Yep.
the strongest track there. Anywhere by Anderson .Paak featuring Snoop Dogg. But then a couple that I didn't talk about, Kate Renata's Chances featuring
Yes.
Shay Leah.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about how this reminded us a lot of Aluna George, and it's just a fucking great song. I can't wait for another Kate Renata album.
Yep.
But a couple others, Morning by Francis and the Lights, which another funny conversation we had. How the fuck did Francis and the Lights come out for this year? I mean, technically it was very end of last year, but because of the cycle, we still counted for this year. But the number one song I had a hard time leaving off, Boot Up by LMI. I mean, you want to talk about just like poppy fun goodness, like ba boot up. So fucking catchy.
Song of the summer.
Yeah, that fucking love that song. And just last shout out, I mentioned the Dirty Projectors before. It's a lifestyle, like gets caught in my brain very easily and played over and over. So one of my favorites from that album. But I think that wraps it up. A great fucking year in music. We didn't even talk about Beyonce and Jay-Z who dropped an album together.
No, I saw Ape Show was on a lot of lists. I also considered The Story of Adidon by Pusha T.
Yeah,
pretty worthy.
like,
I mean, you mentioned This Is America in terms of cultural footprint, talking points. That was right there. And lastly, 1985 by J. Cole. I really like that song too.
Yeah, we didn't mention Drake. We didn't mention the 1975. All artists and that are going to have songs and their albums, or however you want to call their projects, in the top 50, top 10s. So there's a lot of good music this year. And we hope that you take our recommendations and try to check it out and find some new music that feels right for you. But we also want to hear what your top 10s of the year were, your best albums and your best songs. So tweet at the pod at Nowstalgia Pod. Leave a comment on our YouTube videos. Let us know what we should be listening to, or what we got wrong, or what we got right. Give us some positive feedback as well. Yeah, and give us that rating review on iTunes. Next week, we're going to be looking at trends of the year, superlatives as well. So if you have any superlatives you want us to get to, or any suggestions, we will take it into account. Any last thoughts for the people, Dave?
21 Savage is releasing an album on Friday, and I think it's going to be really good. I'm just disappointed it didn't come out a few weeks ago for the sake of the list.
Next year we'll be saying, I can't believe 21 Savage came out this year, even though it wasn't technically this year. So anyways, until next week, we love you. Peace out.